Kia ora, welcome to Under the Checkered Flag, MotoGP edition. I'm your host Kate, and we're just going to jump right in. We had a sizzling Spanish Grand Prix this weekend in Jerez, and it was full of excitement and full of action. And as always, we are going to start with Moto3, because after a dominant Friday and Saturday, David Alonso was the firm favourite coming into the Sunday Grand Prix. But in true Moto3 fashion, Sunday delivered an unexpected race after Alonso crashed out of the lead. Kelly, do you want to start with the podium results before going on to your thoughts of the race?
As we know, I was not able to watch any of the races because I was attending a Scouts event, but it definitely, if you know who I am, definitely was a good race for me. I believe I did have David Alonso in my predictions, and after he crashed out, I had checked the standings mid-race. I was like, oh no, like Alonso's gone. What am I going to do? And then at the end, I came here, and Kate told me that Colin Vire had won. I was like, no way! Like, this was, like, so cool. I was so happy. Like, everyone in my Scouts group was like, what's wrong with you? I was like, my favorite rider won! Like, I was like a little child. So definitely very happy. And then in P2 came David Munoz. Was I expecting that? No. But it was good to see. Very happy for him. And then Ivan Ortola in third. Good to see that he didn't make a mistake with the bikes again. It's a bit of a shame I didn't put him in my predictions this week. I had a thought of doing that, but after the bike incident, I was like, maybe not. And I think I regret that now. But apart from that, a decent podium that I'm very happy with.
Just a couple of thoughts that I had about the Moto3 race. Obviously, Jose Antonio Rueda missed out on this race again with a few complications of the appendix surgery he had in Kota. He was replaced by Vicente Perez on the Saturday. The theme over this weekend was having a lot of crashes in the races. Moto3 only had two crashes, which was Alonso on the first lap and his teammate Joel Esteban on the final lap, both at the same corner. Outside of that, just going to go over my rookies again. Nicolo Carraro was the top rookie in P8 with his career best result. Angel Piqueras took home another top 10. Jacob Ralston was P12 after having a big crash during qualifying. And David Almanza got P15 with his first points of the season.
And Moto3 is normally the most exciting racing of the weekend, but I have to admit this week it was definitely overshadowed by the other two classes. The last thing I want to mention in Moto3 is that the crowd let out this insanely huge groan when Alonso crashed out, and so he's clearly a very popular rider, and I think that's partly just down to his natural talent and just also him as a person. He seemed like such a sweet kid, really. But moving on to Moto2, we saw Furman Aldeguer take his first win of the season. It came a lot later than I was expecting, 4 races in, but it also didn't come easy, as he had to fight quite hard for that first place in the first few laps. PozzA, do you want to talk us through Moto2?
Yeah, I felt it was a pretty exciting race overall. Also pretty sure on one of the last podcasts I said if Aldeguer gets a clean race together, incident free, he could be really strong. And this was the first race of the season that he hasn't had any other incidents. Just got to the front, started to set his own pace, and in the end won the race. Um, just on Joe Roberts, he's got pretty sure it was his third straight podium, and he's now the first American championship leader in any of the classes since Nicky Hayden. And he's on 69 points, which I just think is a fun fact. Outside of that, it was a pretty incident-packed race. I counted 12 riders that went down. Pretty sure the first one was Senna Agius crashing with Zonta van den Goorberg. I did want to ask if you guys thought that Zonta deserved the long lap that he got for that incident, because to me, from the replay they showed, it did just look like he kind of went wide and lost momentum, and Agius just had nowhere to go and ran up the back of him.
I personally think racing incident, I thought it was really quite harsh that he got the long lap, especially given later incidents in the weekend that didn't receive any penalties. So it's definitely not a decision I agree with.
Yeah, I completely agree with Kate there. I looked at replays, as much replays as I could, and I genuinely think that was a racing incident. But as we know, the FIM aren't exactly known for the best decision making when it comes to penalties. So was it a shock? No. Was it irritating and definitely undeserved? Yes, in my opinion.
Also, just going over the rookies again. My personal favorite, Dennis Onshu, ended up as top rookie in Moto2 in P14. He had Jama Masia in front of him late on in the race, but Masia did crash on the last lap, just coming into the last sector. He was the only rookie to finish in the points, Anju, and he's now the top rookie in the class again. Aside of that, Mario Aggi finished P16. Artigas ended up crashing but rejoined the race. And the other three rookies, Masia, Morera, and Agis, all crashed out. And Ayumu Sasaki was another one that missed the race through injury.
And speaking about injury and favourite riders, my favourite rider, Aaron Canet, was out of the racing this weekend. He had quite a hefty fall in one of the practice sessions and did manage to break his ankle. So I was quite sad because I didn't get to see him race. But also, recovery is the most important thing, and he's already been posting on his Instagram. Thanks to PozzA for sending me the clip of him training, which I think is quite incredible. And I do just want to double down on PozzA's point of Joe Roberts leading the championship with 69 points, because the fact that he's the first American since Nicky Hayden and he's on Nicky Hayden's number, I just think that's, yeah, it's quite wholesome. But Saturday's sprint race can only be described as chaos. From a triple rider synchronized swimming style crash to Marc Marquez breaking my fangirl heart and crashing out of the lead, it was certainly not what I'd call peak racing. The podium saw, initially, Fabio Quartararo in P3, but he ended up with a tyre pressure penalty and got demoted, which left Danny Pedrosa, the wild card for KTM Racing, on the podium in P3. In P2 was Pedro Acosta, and in P1 was Jorge Martin. Now, that podium doesn't really set the stage for what that race was. So, Kelly, what stood out most to you from this sprint?
Considering I tried to watch as much as I could, even though I did miss like a big chunk of it every time I came back, all I saw in the corner was, let's say, Luca Marini, crash, Maverick Vinales, crash, three people crashing together. Like, I was like, what? Like I could go off and do whatever, cook dinner, and I come back and all I see is a crash in the corner. I'm like, what is going on? It was definitely one of the craziest sprints I've seen, especially because it's only like half length. So when I saw that, like in a half length race, I was like, what's tomorrow's going to be like? What's happening tomorrow? So like out of 22 riders, I believe, 16 finished. I was like, whoa, okay then, what's going on here? Unfortunately, I was quite upset because, you know, Brad crashed, Anea crashed, Marco crashed, and I was like, well, these are all my favorites. Like, what am I supposed to do now? And then Fabio getting a podium was like, okay, this is good. He has a podium. And I come back about like a couple hours later, like a couple second penalty. I was like, oh, like that's my sprint. That's my sprint ruined. But I think the race definitely turned out better for me.
I had the pleasure of covering all of the races on our Twitter, doing a live blog type thing. And genuinely, in the sprint, when I was trying to write one tweet, I think 6 riders went down in the space of me typing it out. And I did the counting, 15 riders crashed overall. 5 of them are at the final corner, which over the weekend did seem to be one of the bad corners with some wet patches that were hard to see, and the other one was turn 5 with 4 crashes.
I do have a question for you both. Sorry to spring it on you. After that 3-person synchronized swimming style crash, do you think that the race should have been red flagged and the track inspected? Or do you think that race direction made the right call given the fact it was so close to the end? PozzA, I'll go to you first.
I was sat there thinking that it probably would have gotten red flagged just because it was sort of clear that there was something up with the track at that point, and especially with Vinales going down, I think the next lap at the same corner as well. I am sort of surprised they didn't red flag it, but at the same time, it's the FIM taking these calls. They've sort of been known to be wildly inconsistent with these sorts of calls in the past before. Yeah, it doesn't really surprise me that they didn't, but it probably should have been red flagged realistically.
I suppose my opinion would lie with Paz as well. Like, it was very close to the end, but then once again, it has me thinking the FIA with the Australian Grand Prix in 2023. 2 laps before the end, red flagged. 1 lap before the end, red flagged. Did that cause chaos? Yes. But at the same time, like, it was because of danger on track, and I feel like it would be better if, like, because so many riders were going down lap after lap on the same exact corner. Even the commentators were talking about it. They're like, "That's a wet patch. Like, there has to be something wrong there." I feel like there should have been a red flag just to like make sure the track is safe, because if that like if so many riders are going down, that could literally be like not fatal injury, but like serious injury. So I think they made the wrong call, but like I said before, they're very known for not making the best decisions.
And I think a good thing to note on the point with the Australian Grand Prix is we wouldn't have that situation, thankfully, because we can just call the results, which, yeah, we wouldn't have that total restarting chaos where there's 2 laps to go, where they all just go gung-ho.
I was just going to say, the race was at 2/3 distance at that point, so if it had been red flagged, it wouldn't have restarted. But I'd also just like to point out Quartararo, even before a majority of the crashes happened, he was up to P9 from P23. Obviously, in the end, he probably finished on the podium due to all of the crashes, but I still think he did a good job recovering up to where he got to before everyone went down.
The Sunday Grand Prix saw 144,000 people through the gates. That seems to be the figure that everyone's agreeing on, because there's been a lot of speculation and backtracking about official number figures coming out from this weekend. But overall, 144,000 for a Sunday crowd definitely created an excellent atmosphere. No matter whether you watched in person or watched on a screen, we were treated to a spectacular Spanish Grand Prix. PozzA, do you want to talk through your moments of the Grand Prix?
My personal sort of favourite part of the race was just seeing Bagnaia completely willing to shove it down the inside of Marquez. Not afraid to make any contact or anything, just because it's what Mark's been doing to the rest of the field when he's been making moves for years at this point. I just think it's really good to see that the other riders are willing to go for the gaps, to make the aggressive moves, not just sitting back and thinking, oh, well, I'm going to make contact and I'll be penalized. And another part of the race that I thought was pretty nice was the lap record that Bagnaia set late on in the race, which pretty much won him the race, gapping Marquez that little bit, stopping him from being able to make any moves. To do that when the tyres were as worn as they were, I just think was really impressive.
Yeah, me for the MotoGP race as well. I had, let's say, less than spectacular expectations after the split race. But it did turn out very well for me, in fairness. Now that I look back on it, I was a bit irritated that I didn't consider Bagnaia as much as I should have. But, that's okay. I will remain a Marc Marquez fangirl. He finished P2, that's good for me. And, oh God, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this, but I am a huge Marco Bezzecchi fan as well. So to see him go down the sprint, I was like, oh, because he's just been so off form since the start of this season. Like last season, he was absolutely speeding. Like he was a championship contender, and now he's just, I don't know what happened, and I wish I did know what happened. So to see him on the podium just genuinely made me happy because it's someone different, and to see him slightly back on form the way he was, it was just, yeah, it made me very happy for a woman. And Enea Bastianini finishing P5, good for me. Brad Binder let me down. He finished P6. He let me down, but we still love him. Hopefully he will come back better. And one thing I do want to mention is the crash between Franco Morbidelli and Jack Miller. I feel like this is one of the first crashes I've seen that isn't of Jack Miller's actual doing, like from himself. This was all Franco. And as someone who'd be more of a fan of Jack than I would be of Franco, I was definitely irritated. And I do feel like he isn't as amazing as people make him out to be, Franco, but that's just my opinion. And I was definitely very sad to see Danny go down as well, Danny Pedrosa. I was hoping he'd come back and at least get a few points, but that's MotoGP racing. There's not much you can do. I could hear the devastation through text from Kate. But yeah, that's really all I have to say. The rest of them, oh no, Pedro Acosta in P10. That was decent. I was expecting more, but I will take a P10. Like, he didn't crash out. Like, half the grid, he didn't crash out, so I'm okay. I'm happy with that. Overall, exciting race. I definitely was not bored, but I think my predictions could have been a lot better if I thought about them a bit more.
I do think Pedro Acosta probably suffered from the fact that he had a massive crash in the warm-up that morning, so was very much playing it a bit safe during the race, which I think is quite a smart decision. And I do just want to touch on your Bezzecchi point, because it does seem to be that Bezzecchi's suffering from the same problem that Enea Bastianini was last year, and that being struggling quite a lot on the brakes. I do just want to mention the podium because I don't think we have. In P3 we had Marco Bezzecchi, in P2 we had Marc Marquez, and in P1 we had Pecco Bagnaia, who pulled off this amazing overtake. It was very similar to one that we saw last year that he didn't quite get stopped. He goes into the corner, and when Marco Bezzecchi and Jorge Martin are already braking, he goes around the outside of them and gets that P2 position, and that was honestly such an incredible overtake. And now I've mentioned Jorge Martin, he crashed out of the lead of the race. A huge mistake that's definitely definitely going to be affecting his championship.
I'd also like to touch on just a little bit the little battle between Pecco and Mark as well. Looking at replays, it was definitely like seeing old form before 2020 Mark again. He was aggressive, he was doing everything he could to be both safe but also trying to get that position. It felt like nostalgia. It was so cool to see. Unfortunately, Pecco did come back on top, but to see Mark even attempting to do the aggressiveness like he was before, it's just really good to see, and I'd hope he keep that up for the rest of the season.
I have to admit, I know I am a Marc Marquez fangirl, but having him battle at the front does really sort of bring this extra excitement. And as PozzA said earlier, that lap that Pecco managed to pull out on those tyres was absolutely incredible. But also, Marc Marquez seemed really ridiculously happy on the podium as well. So overall, I had a great weekend, even though the sprint was so utterly chaotic. So finally, I just want to touch on some post-race thoughts from Johann Zarco. So Johann Zarco had some fairly blunt words to say about Freddy Spencer, and thanks to the Race podcast for translating Zarco's quote, because he did say this in French, and you can definitely see that in the sentence structure. He said, "We are working all the riders to have this group together, to have the right to speak, and then maybe get the right people to take decisions." His next sentence was, "I repeat, Freddy Spencer is not the right guy in this position." Now, he was talking about the fact that he went to the stewards along with Aleix Espargaro after the race, and Freddy Spencer turned to him because there was an incident between Espargaro and Zarco in the race that caused them both to crash. And Spencer looked at him like, "Do you want this guy to have a penalty?" And it ended up with Zarco saying some extremely choice words and getting kicked out of race direction, and then Aleix Espargaro leaving in solidarity with Zarco. And I just really want to get your guys' views on this. And PozzA, I know you and I share very similar views on the stewarding. So do you want to start?
Yeah, just historically, Zarco's also been one of the riders that has gotten some of the, say, more questionable decisions from the FIM. But I honestly completely agree with him. Just in general, Freddy Spencer, since he's came in, there's not been any like consistent decisions. It seems like every every incident that looks the same but are a couple race parts get penalized differently. Sometimes there's like a double long lap. Sometimes they say, "Oh, it's a racing incident." Um, I do think they need to try and work on finding someone better suited to the job. But that is just my personal opinion.
How about you?
I'd honestly agree with you both. I definitely do think that the stewarding is completely off, 100% off. And Freddie Spencer may not be the guy suited to the job. However, I feel that Zarco's words were a bit too straightforward. When you have a position in motorsport or any sport really, it's down to you to make your words respectful, is at the same time putting your point across. And I feel like the way he said it was a bit like a Lance Stroll incident after if it was a bit like that one Lance Stroll interview where he just gave one word answers and went off. It's a situation where media training is important because you could be like I love Zarco. I love Zarco a lot, but this could paint him in a bad light. People who agree with Freddie Spencer and so on. So I feel like if he wants to put his point across, he needs to think about his media training a bit more and put it across in a positive light, yet definitely making sure people understand him. Other than that, I definitely agree. Freddie Spencer, I feel like they need to bring in someone else who's definitely more suited to the job, who can actually give out the right bloody penalties. That's just my opinion as well. It seems that we all share the same three opinions.
Yeah, and I've yet to find anyone who agrees with Freddie Spencer, so I'm not too worried about people thinking about Zarco's comments in that way. But one final thing, PozzA touched on it earlier. We have started a live Twitter blog because the two people who I'm joined with today decided I didn't give them enough work. So during the race weekend, pretty much all of the sessions, they'll be highlighting key moments over on the Twitter. So do feel free to jump over there and follow us. And next week's pod, we're going to be touching on the incoming brand revamp of MotoGP and Yamaha's wildcards for the season. And also recapping the predictions this week because, well, let's just say Kelly thinks she did terribly, but she may be in the lead. So we'll just have to see.